What if I told you a gorilla once spoke words that shook the way we see ourselves as humans? A truth so raw, so emotional, that it still echoes decades later. Imagine an animal not just mimicking sounds, but actually speaking to us in her own language, revealing what she truly felt about us, about humanity. What she said wasn't just surprising, it was heartbreaking. And once you hear it, you'll never look at animals, or even yourself, the same way again. Her name was Koko. At first glance, she was just like any other gorilla, massive, powerful, and intimidating to some. But behind those deep brown eyes was a soul that the world would come to know as gentle, loving, and extraordinary. Born in 1971 at the San Francisco Zoo, Koko wasn't destined for fame. She was fragile, even sick as an infant. Yet, against all odds, she survived. And it was in those early days that something remarkable began to unfold. Koko wasn't just another gorilla. She had a spark, a hunger to connect in a way no one had ever seen before. Soon, she would meet the one person who believed in her, the young psychologist Dr. Patterson. Penny saw not just an animal, but a mind waiting to be understood. She would go on to dedicate her entire life to proving that Koko was far more than science could explain. Teaching a gorilla to communicate with humans had never been done before. But Penny believed in Koko, not as a test subject, but as a friend. She began with the basics, American Sign Language. At first the signs were simple: eat, drink, toy. But Koko wasn't just memorizing motions. She was learning to express her heart. Within months, she signed her first word: food. It wasn't just a gesture, it was a spark of understanding. Soon, the vocabulary grew. Dozens, then hundreds of words. Koko learned to ask for things she wanted. Her favorite treats, her favorite toys. But what truly stunned the world was that she used words to describe feelings. She signed sad, she signed love, she signed happy. This was more than training. This was language. A gorilla, finding her own voice. Koko didn't just learn signs. She used them in ways no one expected. She played with words, combining them to describe things she had never been taught. When she saw a ring, she signed finger bracelet. When she wanted a kitten, she didn't just ask, she begged, showing tenderness most humans couldn't ignore. And when she finally got that kitten, she cared for it like a mother, gently holding it, cradling it, even scolding it when it misbehaved. This wasn't instinct, it was love expressed in her own language. Koko also laughed at jokes, teased her caretakers, and even lied, just like a child would. Once, when she ripped a sink out of the wall, she pointed to her pet cat and signed, "Cat did it." These moments weren't tricks, they were proof of thought, emotion, and personality. Proof that behind those deep eyes lived a mind far more complex than anyone had dared to believe. Through every sign, every glance, and every laugh, Koko built a bond with humans that went far beyond science. Her caretaker, Dr. Patterson, wasn't just her teacher. She became her closest friend, her family. Penny spoke to Koko not as an experiment, but as a daughter, listening to her words, comforting her when she cried, and celebrating when she learned something new. Koko, in return, showed Penny a depth of affection that melted even the coldest hearts. She would wrap her massive arms around her, gently pressing her forehead against Penny's, as if to say, "I understand you. I trust you." And it wasn't just Penny. Celebrities, scientists, even ordinary visitors who met Koko often left in tears. Robin Williams once spent a day with her, and their laughter filled the room. Years later, when Robin passed away, Koko wept, signing the word sad. This wasn't a wild animal locked in a cage. This was a soul, reaching across the invisible wall that separates us from the animal kingdom, reminding us that love has no species. For years, Koko amazed the world with her gentle spirit and surprising intelligence. But nothing could prepare her caretakers for the day she spoke, not about toys, not about food, not even about love, but about us. One afternoon, During a conversation about the earth, Koko's hands began to move slowly, deliberately, as if the weight of her words pressed heavily on her. She signed, "Man, stupid. Man, careless." The room went silent. This wasn't a playful joke or a simple request. These were words of judgment, of sorrow. And then, with tears glistening in her eyes, she signed again. "Fix Earth. Help Earth. Protect." In that moment, it was as if nature itself had borrowed Koko's hands to send us a warning. A gorilla, caged her entire life, asking us, pleading with us, to save the world she would never fully know. Koko didn't speak in long sentences the way we do, but her words carried more truth than most speeches ever could. When she signed, "Man stupid, man careless," she wasn't insulting us. She was mourning us, mourning what we have done to the earth, the forests that once stretched endlessly, the rivers that once ran pure, the animals that once lived freely. Koko had never walked in a wild jungle, never swung from tree to tree, never heard the chorus of the rainforest at dawn. Yet somehow, she knew what was being lost. She felt it, even from the walls of her sanctuary. Her words were not anger, they were heartbreak. Heartbreak for the planet, and heartbreak for us, because she believed we could do better. She believed we could choose love over destruction. And when she signed, "Fix Earth, Protect Earth," it wasn't just a plea for nature. It was a plea for humanity itself, a reminder that in saving the world, we are also saving ourselves. The moment Koko signed those words, something shifted. Scientists, caretakers, even skeptics who once dismissed her as a clever trick, suddenly fell silent. This wasn't an experiment anymore. It was a mirror, held up to humanity by a gorilla who had never walked in our shoes, yet understood our flaws more clearly than we often admit to ourselves. Her words spread across the world, carried by news outlets and documentaries. People cried, people questioned, and some even changed. Schools began sharing her story with children, teaching them that compassion for animals is compassion for ourselves. Environmental groups used her message as a rallying cry, a reminder that protecting the earth is not just science, it's survival. But perhaps the greatest impact was personal. Those who stood face to face with Koko often described a feeling they could never forget, like she was looking straight into their soul. Her eyes didn't just see you, they understood you. And her words, they stayed with you. For many, Koko wasn't just a gorilla. She became a teacher, a sympathy of love and care, showing us that sometimes the truest wisdom comes not from humans, but from the voices we rarely stop to hear. In June of 2018, the world said goodbye to Koko. She passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 46, leaving behind not just memories, but a movement. Her life proved something humanity had long doubted, that the line between us and the animal kingdom is not as wide as we once believed. She showed us that intelligence is not bound by language, that love is not limited to humans, and that compassion can be spoken in 1,000 silent ways. Today, her story continues to inspire. Children grow up learning about the gorilla who could talk, and in her words, they hear a lesson deeper than any textbook could teach. Animal sanctuaries, conservationists, and educators across the globe still use her voice as a beacon, reminding us that every creature on this planet has value, has feeling, and has something to teach us, if only we listen. Koko's legacy is not just about a gorilla who learned sign language. It's about the bridge she built between species, between hearts, between humans and the earth itself. And that bridge still stands. So here's the question. If a gorilla could speak and remind us to love our planet, to care for one another, and to protect what we are losing, what excuse do we, as humans, have for not listening? Koko's voice was never just hers. It was nature's voice. It was every animal, every tree, every corner of this fragile world, pleading through her hands. And maybe, just maybe, her message wasn't meant to end with her. Maybe it was meant to begin with us. If this story touched your heart, then join us here at Inspiring Wild Tales. Subscribe, share this video, and leave a comment with your thoughts, because the more we spread these voices, the more we can keep Koko's legacy alive. Together, we can honor her message. Together, we can be the change she believed in.